you. Greetings, Geneva, Lake Forest, and Fort Worth. I know what you're all thinking. Isn't he a little short to be a stormtrooper? I'm so happy to be with you today at TEDx at Alcon. Thank you for spending your time with us today. I know that you will be enriched. How many of you have ever attended a comic book convention like Comic-Con or Fan Days or something like that? One of the things I love about Comic-Con is spending time with my family and dressing up as our favorite superheroes or movie stars and becoming real-life characters. As we go through our journey today, every photo that you see contains one of my family members. So yeah, we're one of those people. I want to share some of the insights that I've learned from Comic-Con and how we can apply those things to our workplace and maybe make our communities even better. There are 3 I's that I'd like to talk about. The first, identity, also being authentic. The second, inclusion. And the third, individuality. I believe that all 3 of these happen at Comic-Con. When we attend Comic-Con, we are surrounded by superheroes. And these 3 I's are the powers that allow superheroes to come to life. And I believe that if we apply them in our workplace, in our lives and community, we can be superheroes too. The first time I went to Comic-Con, I took my son. You see him pictured there. He's the short little character from Star Wars, Jango Fett. His name just happens to be Luke. And yes, the Force is strong with him. What's interesting about Luke is that he's also an April Fool's baby. And so he doesn't get to celebrate very often without people thinking that he's faking them out. But it's great when you're going to an event like this because you get to be whoever you want to be. He decided to be Jango Fett. And you know, the name Luke is always pretty fun because at home, I have 3 other kids, but if I'm ever upset with him, I can always give the famous line, "Luke, I am your father. Listen to me. I know what I'm talking about." When we went to Comic-Con, he had on his costume and he was ready to go. He was excited to be there. But as we walked around to the different booths and participated, I noticed that he didn't put his helmet on. I don't know if it was because it was cumbersome, he couldn't see, or maybe he was embarrassed or timid. I'm not really sure why. But as we walked throughout the event, he wouldn't wear his helmet. We got into a panel where they were discussing a movie and they had some celebrities there, and we were waiting there kind of early. And as we looked and watched, people were coming in and out, and eventually a woman came up to my son Luke and said, "Are you Jango Fett?" And he said, "I am." She said, "Well, that's my favorite character from Star Wars. Can I take a photo with you?" So Luke put on his helmet and stood up. This is the auditorium. And she took a photo with him. So I snapped a quick photo as well. Something interesting happened. Luke became Jango Fett. He wouldn't take the helmet off. Everywhere we went through the rest of the day, he no longer was walking by me. He was now 2 or 3 paces ahead. He became Jango Fett. And it dawned on me that this was his identity. His personality was coming out. His true, authentic self was on display for everyone that was there. And it was inhibited when he didn't wear the mask. Now I can't get Luke to stop dressing up. When the latest Spider-Man movie came out, guess what? Luke is Spider-Man. In fact, this is his shirt. So I'm Spider-Man. But what's so cool about this is that it allows his personality to come to life when he puts on the mask. There's an interesting line in the latest Batman movie, and I think it's interesting because the Riddler says something to the Batman. He virtually says, Everybody talks about unmasking us. But when we take our masks off, it's not who we really are. My mask allows me to be myself. That's what happened to Luke. We had a chance to meet Stan Lee. And Stan Lee said something that I've taken to heart. He just said, "Dad, you're doing it right." And what I interpreted that to be was that I was encouraging my kids to be their authentic self. I think that that's important for each one of us, to let our true identity come out. Whether it's wearing a mask or it's not wearing a mask, we need to be true to ourselves. The second I is inclusion. When we went to these comic book conventions and different events, we would meet some really fun people who were dressed up in costumes, and it didn't matter if you spent $3 on your costume or $3,000 on your costume. It was welcomed. People said, "That's cool, I love it." It didn't matter if you were tall or small or anywhere in between. People loved seeing each other in their costumes. We met a guy by the name of TK Travis. And he was TK because that's what they're known in Star Wars as stormtroopers. And TK Travis would sometimes dress up as a stormtrooper, sometimes be a vendor. He has been in a couple of the Disney Plus Star Wars movies as a stormtrooper. And we got to kind of chat up a little bit about his fandom. We became friends. Next thing you know, every time we would go to a Comic-Con event, we wanted to see, was TK Travis there? And sure enough, he was. And so we would connect with him. We would talk to him. We would visit his booth. We would take a photo. And what's interesting is in the top right, you see a photo. That was just a couple months ago when he was here in Dallas at Fan Expo. We had a chance to connect with Travis. He talked to my kids who are now, 6, 7 years older than when we first met him. And it was so cool to hear him ask about what's going on in their lives. What's their favorite subject in school? This is a guy that's a stormtrooper that we met at a comic book convention. But when a hurricane came through a city, we reached out and said, "Travis, are you okay?" He said, "Yes, I am. Thanks for reaching out." Something happens when we surround ourselves and we welcome people and include them. You start to feel accepted. When your true identity and authentic self is out on public display, you're comfortable, you're confident. And then when you're surrounded by people who are doing the same thing, you feel accepted and you want to collaborate. We had the opportunity a few years ago to participate in a kind of a once-in-a-lifetime Guinness Book of World Records. Most people dressed as comic book heroes in one place at one time. I came, and like many adults probably don't have really cool, hardcore costumes. Oh, by the way, Travis is who got me this Star Wars Stormtrooper helmet. I need to make a whole costume of that. But most of the time I go to events wearing something like this. And so I showed up thinking I could be in the Guinness Book of World Records, and I'm gonna put that on LinkedIn, right? They said, "Hey, t-shirts don't count as costumes. You can't be in the photo." What, right? Like, all right, fine. So I stepped to the side. My kids are actually in there, and 2 of them are part of the Guinness Book of World Records. I think it's 1,784 people dressed in costume as comic book characters at the same time in the same place. And that's them front and center of this giant photo. If you ever look it up, you can go to the Guinness Book of World Records and you'll see that the Comic-Con event that I'm talking about. What's interesting about this photo is I don't think it's much different than the room here today. If we look around, if we were our true authentic self, I'm not sure what mask we would wear. I'm not sure if we would wear a mask, but we would want a high five and we would want to feel accepted. We would want to be like and with each other because we felt like we were together. I don't know if that always happens when we come to work. I don't know if that always happens in our communities. Could you imagine if we all came together in a moment like this and felt accepted? Wow. Let's start wearing costumes to work. What would your costume be? I bet it would be cool because you have superpowers and maybe you're hiding them until you get home and put on the costume. The last couple of years we spent time in the pandemic, and that's forced us into little 1-inch boxes. But you know what's cool about that? I saw identity. I saw true, authentic self. People showed up the way they wanted to dress. Life was going on in the background, kids, cats, whatever, right? And we were so accepting and so welcoming. And sometimes we just turned the camera off and said, you know what? Like I do, it's a bad hair day. And we were so welcoming and so accepting of that. Something happens when maybe we come back to work in a physical space. Maybe we're forced to wear a different costume and we leave our true identity at home. When that happens, we don't feel included. We don't feel true to ourselves. We can't innovate or collaborate the same way that we could if we were the superhero that we are. I believe that every one of us is a superhero, and every one of us has a superpower that is on display at all times, but sometimes we might need to put on a mask or a helmet or a costume to release ourselves from those inhibitions that hold us back. I hope that you will look around you and you will find individuals' true identity and welcome that light to shine. I hope that we will be more inclusive in our communities, in our society, our teams and workplace, to welcome people as they are. And I hope that we will honor individuality, because when we are our true authentic self and we have individuality and we include everyone, we will have our Avengers moment and we can conquer the enemy. May the force be with you. Thank you.